Coming up.
I was told by a very wise man who was one of the sales managers at the time that the successful people in our industry not necessarily are the ones with the MBAs and all the degrees on the walls and they can draw charts and talk, day and night about the stock market. These are people that can communicate. So they have communication skills, but it also meant that you were able to get people to understand you, like you, and at the same time, you can handle rejection because the reality of this industry, as in any sales industry, is rejection.
Well, hey there, Hidden Nation. It's so good to see you. Welcome right in. It's Josh Cary here. It's your Hidden Entrepreneur. Hidden Nation, what I really appreciate, if I do say so, about my brand, the Hidden Entrepreneur, it's all about me spending a lifetime hiding all of my best parts in exchange for seeking approval. But what I find more and more as I talk to different people on this show is that it's not uncommon, no matter who you are and where you are in your career, that you might feel a little bit of, let's say, an imposter, or you might feel what I heard recently is called founder's guilt. And more often, you're just hiding. You're not showing up. You're invisible. And today, what fascinates me is we're talking to one of my great friends who I've had on the show before, and we're talking again. It's Mitch Slater, a fellow Jersey guy. But more than that, Mitch has spent 35 years in the financial advisor world and is still there. But subtly, he now transitioned in UBS, where he's working, to help financial advisors become more visible through digital marketing. That includes podcasts. That includes social media on LinkedIn. How do you get yourself out there? And I'm fascinated by this, that he has literally pioneered the UBS podcast and TV division. Mitch, so good to have you on the program today.
Thanks, Josh. Always a pleasure to be here and always a pleasure to talk to you because I've learned so much from you about all of this. So you're one of the many reasons why I had the guts to pivot and make this change over the last few years.
I appreciate that feedback. What fascinates me about this is my, let's say, ignorance. When I hear financial advisors, I think, well, they got it all together. They know what they're doing. But you, in fact, have educated me and continually say, no, they're missing a big chunk of this. They are not nearly as visible, let's say, in the modern day. What have you done to really flip that script for them?
Well, I think what I've done is what I lived in my experience. I mean, I'm a pure living example of flipping the script. I'm a guy, as you know, and we talked about in previous interviews, who started in broadcasting, wanted to be an actor, was all about performing, loved being on stage, had the incredible opportunity in my 20s of working for Larry King, Howard Stern, working in TV and radio and having a lot of fun. And really understanding the industry at the time, never really going to the level of success that I would have liked to, but I enjoyed every aspect of it. And I learned from the masters. Again, Larry King taught me so much about listening and curiosity. Terry Gross, who I worked for at WHYY with Fresh Air, who's still on the air with her podcast, I understood about research. So the things that I was learning there pivoted me in my late 20s into a career I would have never dreamt of if not for my dad, who was in the career as a second career for him in the financial services industry, because I was told by a very wise man who was one of the sales managers at the time, who wound up running a number of these firms, that the successful people in our industry not necessarily are the ones with the MBAs and all the degrees on the walls and they can draw charts and talk, day and night about the stock market. These are people that can communicate. So they have communication skills. That back then that meant picking up the phone. Maybe that's not exactly what it is today, but it also meant that you were able to get people to understand you, like you, And at the same time, you can handle rejection because the reality of this industry, as in any sales industry, is rejection. And, the Derek Jeter example is the constant one everyone uses. And, you're going to make the Hall of Fame 3 out of 10 times. Well, rejection, bring it on to me. I mean, was worked. I still have that stack of letters from TV and radio stations around the country that said no to me applying for first jobs and things like that. And so having somebody say no to me was just a challenge, and it was part of the discipline. They taught me everything else, and to the credit, the firm that I started working for did a very good job in giving me the knowledge that I needed, as well as finding the right people to work with, and realizing that this is an industry that does a very good job in what we call advisory, which is having managed money and things like that. So all of these things started me on that career. And as I got into that career, I made the decision very early on that the only way I would survive without going nuts is taking the creative side of me and somehow meshing that with my practice, which led me to do a financial radio show for a number of years that was syndicated, led me to be doing all the TV work that I did on CNBC, CNN, News 12, New Jersey, for example. And then eventually led me meeting to our mutual friend, Gary Vaynerchuk, who just like, whoa, opened up this entire world that was out there of social media and podcasting and video and LinkedIn. And I decided to get my MBA in video and my MBA in podcasting and my MBA in LinkedIn and find experts in that area like you to teach me so I can help advisors be better at getting known. That's the most
Hmm.
important 2 words. And I'm going to quote, a great author, Mark Schaefer, who's written a number of different books on marketing. And my brother turned me on to him. And his book is called Known. And it's a handbook for unleashing your personal brand in the digital age. And that book just sort of opened up everything to me.
You saw this gap because you felt it within yourself. So you're surrounded in the financial advisor world. Admittedly, not a world that I would see really coming to the table with the podcasts and with the social marketing. But you were able to fill this need. What are you really providing them to become personal brands today?
Well, I'm providing them proof of life, first of all, proof that it works, okay, by peer share, by showing examples. Part of what I do is I host a number of shows for UBS's television studio where I'm helping peer share and giving people ideas and interviewing advisors that are having success in many of these areas, as well as speaking like to you on my advisor marketing podcast that I do to tell people about different strategies and ways for them to do it. So, it's 2 worlds colliding. I mean, it's not natural for the financial services industry. This is a very highly regulated industry, as it should be. I mean, if anybody learned anything from 2008 and 2009 and Madoff and the creation of the Consumer Protection Fraud Board, which I certainly hope stays in place without getting political. Those things are really important. And, that was not a natural thing. That being said, the world was just moving at this pace. And with the 2 industries that were, I call it on a 10-year delay, instead of a 10-second delay, were the pharmaceutical industry and the financial services industry. Not because there weren't brilliant marketing minds understanding that, but you had the lawyers, the compliance that have to answer to the regulators, and they just did their jobs. And I don't blame any of them. That's what they have to do. And they still have to be incredibly cautious, and they should be. But there are compliant ways of doing this. And at the end of the day, authenticity is what matters over perfection. People want to see the real you, not just a scripted sales pitch. And these are these little tidbits that most of the advisors in our industry are my age or closer to my age. That being said, there's the farm system is coming up, and that farm system knows these things. They grew up with iPhones. They grew up with all these forms of social media, and they realize the power of it, as will the folks that are going to inherit the $80 trillion that is going to be moving from the baby boomer generation, my generation. I made it by 4 years, I think, to the next couple of generations that are going to inherit money. And in the case of women, are going to be triple inheritors. They're going to inherit, from the death of the divorce. Well, start with the divorce, possibly then the death of a spouse, and maybe even inherited businesses. So what are these folks going to do? And LinkedIn's done so many surveys on this, and especially women, they want to know more. They just don't want to see your resume and canned goods, so to speak. They want to know who you are. They want to make sure that you are that they make the first call to you.
Hmm.
That's one of, I think, the best thing that some of the advisors that I've been working with in the last few years around the country um, are doing so well, because they're the first call. So when there, God forbid, there's great things that happens and there are bad things that happens, and I've experienced both. But either way, that first call should be to their financial advisor to help them with so many different things beyond investing, advice beyond
Hmm.
investing, if you will.
So you're a thought leader in the financial advisor space. You also speak on the topic of stop being invisible. What is the theme of that approach? What do you tell financial advisors that any listener can really take to heart?
Well, I think number one is advisors need to be known, right? Right. We talked about that. So, and how are you going to do that throughout some form of visibility? And this is an industry that is totally driven by trust. Okay. Why do people trust you? Well, yes, you have the degree. Yes, you have the experience. Yes, you have the three letters after your name. Yes, you've been honored by Forbes or Barron. Mazel tov. That's terrific. That being said, they don't really know you. Okay, and in order to be the first call, they want to know you, and their job is to know them. If you're doing the proper planning in their lives, whether it's a family office situation or whether it's just an individual situation. So you have to differentiate yourself in this crowded market. And everybody's offering similar services, but if you're building your own unique personal brand, that that's going to get you referrals. And I feel so, as you can hear, anyone listening, I'm very passionate about this. And that is why, after 35 years of a very successful career, I could have stayed on another 15 and stayed in my role. But I felt the industry had a gap and I wanted to help. I felt like I learned so much, and I was fortunate to learn from so many incredible people, from the Larry Kings of the world to the Peter Lynches of the world, who I was able to interview on a radio show years ago, who taught me about it's not about timing the market, it's your time in the market. And he wrote so many books on that. To obviously the Warren Buffetts of the world, to the Gary Vaynerchuks of the world, who opened my eyes to a whole new generation of what is happening. And I just felt like somebody needs to be out there banging the drum. Why not me?
So
And I'm
how
fortunate enough that my firm believed in me to do it.
That's amazing. And how do we stop being invisible? What are the steps we can take out of the gate?
Well, I think you have to immediately look at what you're doing. All right. Just because you have a website means absolutely nothing. All right. What is that website going to? I mean, the first thing anyone is going to do when they are referred to you or they learn about you is obviously Google you. So they need, what are they going to find? Okay. Well, They may find a really well done video that talks about your practice or your team and introducing you to different members and who does what, and give examples or show you with your family at some of the things that matter to you, that are in the nonprofit world, for example. So they get to know you as a human being. I think at the end of the day, it's really human to human, and that's really all it comes down to, is that they're not. I never looked at, maybe early in my career, I looked at clients like on this pedestal of they're the client, they're the client. No, they're Matt and they're Bill and they're Joe and they're John and they're Laura and they're who, they're people and they're real lives, and and you know what's going on in their life and what matters to them. And if you're not asking what is their most important financial need right up front, forget the investments. Okay. I'm not saying, let me put this, because it's not back to the dot-com days where, the sock puppet could, or the monkey could throw the dart against the wall. There's a lot more to it, obviously, but they need to know really what matters in their life. And if I know they have a special needs kid, I know that that is always on their mind. I know that if their mom passed away from Alzheimer's, and it was a horrible experience and there was no money in the family and all the kids had to contribute, they don't want that to happen in their family. They're selling a business. What is that like? What does that look like? What exit strategies? There's people that can bust myths on what needs to be done. There's so many different areas. And that's not even getting into what to me was always a most important area, is financial literacy. Is that we live in a nation which is ranked 14th, when it comes to financial literacy. We live in a nation that doesn't teach in the schools about basic money skills. It is still easier for most parents to have the sex talk rather than the money talk. All right. And these are just basic things that when you start working with people, and you have these conversations, it matters. But today you can take those conversations to a whole different level by, having a podcast, for example, and focusing in a little bit more on all of those skills and those strategies and speaking to the experts in that area. There are so many amazing writers out there, or people that have written books on different topics that can help you. And you just have to do the legwork.
You single-handedly beat the drum long enough and loud enough inside UBS that you've chipped away at their strategy. I know that it's big right now. It started with your own show. Now you help financial advisors inside UBS with their own public facing shows, and you have internal shows. There's a video TV show you host under UBS. What's the message for other financial advisors who are not yet quite getting it?
Well, I'll tell you what, the message is, I'm happy to say I'm not alone. There are many other people out there that are doing a really great job, that are teaching a lot of these courses. There are conferences now going on throughout the year where they can learn more on these topics. But you can't left behind, there should be no child left behind, no financial advisor left behind. There's no excuse for you not to do this. The internet will provide all of that information. A lot of it is out there, but it depends on you and how you leverage it and how you engage yourself in. To me, the most critical aspect of all of this comes down to what I know you preach, is storytelling, because that's what gets people to relate. Everyone has a story, and everyone wants their story to be told. And what's your story going to be? And by speaking with someone, and you do this in the programs that you run, you learn about their stories and how those stories may fit into their lives, and how those stories may mesh with the people that they're trying to help, with the clients that they're helping. And I mean, I'll give you an example of one story of someone I'm working with out on the West Coast. Was working with a wealthy family, which is not, unlike what we do in our industry. And the patriarch of the family wanted to do this very, very expensive trip. I mean, ridiculous amount of money with yachts and all kinds of things. And this is a well-to-do family, but the wife knew, and even the kids knew this was too much. And they relied on the financial advisor to let that person know. But how did she do it? She did it in a clever way. What she did was she was invited, I think it was an engagement party for one of the kids, and she knew she would see the husband, the patriarch of the family. And she had said that she was going to get back to see if this makes sense. And what she did was she showed up at the party with a hat on that said the word no, and she put it on his head. And it became, he was laughing hysterically. His wife was laughing. I mean, they understood the message. She did it in a dramatic way. But that's what a real advisor should be doing. They're not there to say yes to you, just like doctors aren't there to tell you, don't worry, cancer will go away. I mean, you'll be fine. I mean, that's not how the real world works. The real world works with real solutions. And sometimes you have to deliver the bad news as well as the good news. Trust me, we should all have such bad news that you don't need to spend X amount on the yachts. You could still have a pretty darn good trip, and being relatable. But most of the people that I think that are in this industry are dealing with uh, high net worth folks.
And what's the biggest misconception for why the advisors? Because I know they often hear your battle cry for the need and the benefits, but what's at the root of it? What do you think really stops them from even considering a move like this?
I would say the number one reason is kind of the number one excuse people use for everything in life, and it's time. I don't have the time. I'm too busy. You don't understand. At 8:30 the phone rings and I'm go, go, go. And we're getting a lot of new business coming in. Or the markets are changing. There's a new administration. I've got to be on top of this. So time is the one commodity that, none of us know how much we will have of, right? That being said, I challenge that, because if you have the kind of teams that are out there these days in the financial advisory practice, you make the time, because that's your future. And it's also the future of those that are working with you, and the future of giving the best quality service to your clients is finding the time. People can find time. I mean, my God, I mean, this morning I sat in bed and was doom scrolling for a good 20 minutes, on Instagram. And I
That's an
mean,
episode,
that's
right? Put 20
exactly
minutes to an episode with a
right.
guest, and you're in.
Exactly. So I am guilty as charged on when it comes to time and using that as an excuse. So I think time is probably the biggest offender. There's money. Sometimes there's cost, although I will tell you, relative to what costs are in our industry to you know
ROI.
all other ROI, I think it's more what my friend Ted Rubin calls ROR. So it's the return on the
Of
relationships.
course.
And that's where you have to put the time in. And if you're putting the time in, you'd be surprised. I mean, I had people say to me, I can't tell you how many things I did, and I am far from the best advisor to ever walk around. I made every mistake known to man. I sound like Al Pacino in Any Given Sunday, but it's true. And that being said, I did some things right. And because I was willing to take risks, all right, there were certain things that I was told, why are you bothering? Why are we going to spend X amount of money to have a table at this event? What's the point of that? I mean, it's a nice charity. They're giving, kids musical instruments or things like that. And I just felt that it combined a lot of the passion that I had, the passion that I knew these clients that were going to sit at this table were going to have while they watched on stage. Yes, Bruce Springsteen was there, of course. But many of these other musical artists and see these kids and believe in it and suddenly tell their friends, and one thing leads to another, and I'm on the board of this organization. I have an amazing things happen with some of the musicians, but more importantly, my clients really related to what we were trying to do and got really interested in that as well.
Absolutely fantastic. I love everything about you, obviously. I say that because we've been connected for years and it's only just begun here. You're literally a trailblazer in what you're doing. It's such good, important, necessary work in your industry. You have the 35 years experience and you are the person for the job. So stay at it. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I mean, I think that what I would leave people with, the most important thing that they need to remember, and this is more of like a life lesson that, we've all learned, it's not who you are. Or it is who you are. It's not just what you do. And I think that is so critical. And remember that, you just because 3 people say no, there's probably going to be 3 people that are going to say yes. Figure out a way to get to yes. Don't give up. It's easy to give up, and no matter what you do in life. But I think that, by sticking with it and sometimes dealing with the rejection, it's only going to make you feel better, improve your life, and improve the people around you. And I'm lucky that I could pay it forward. And that's really what I'm trying to do.